Welcome back, and now for Chapter 32, Dinner with Ragan. It was the middle of the night, and Ragan was anxious. Bree had been in the wind tower for a while, and not too long ago the top seemed to collapse. He lost 2 men when the walls near the top of the tower rained down on the courtyard below, and 6 more were injured. He paced outside the tent he had set up, wringing his hands. "You need to relax." Ziram's voice oozed out of the tent opening, where he sat in a chair, holding a leash attached to Blaze. "She will come." "You sure?" Ragan said, still pacing. "The top of the tower crumbled a while ago. How do you know she's still alive?" Ziram glanced down at Blaze. "The dog isn't worried, and animals can sense things before humans can." "I'm a wolf," Blaze muttered, to which Ziram yanked on the leash a bit. "Let him go." Ragan turned to see Bree emerge from the crowd and removed a hood covering her head. The pirates in the air began to chatter amongst themselves as though she could pass through them undetected. Ragan did a mocking bow and gestured to the tent. "Milady, I'm happy to see you survive the tower. Why don't you come join us for some food?" Bree's eyes went from Blaze to Ziram to Ragan. "Will you let Blaze go?" "Of course. Inside the tent." Bree didn't move for a few minutes. "There's food in there?" Ragan nodded. "Of course, you must be famished. Come, eat with us, rest up, then you can have your pet back." Blaze growled a little, but Ziram lightly tugged on the leash to stop him. "Only if I get to hold Blaze," Bree said. Ragan looked to Ziram, who eventually nodded, then turned back to Bree. "Of course." Bree followed Ragan into the tent and marveled at its size. It was big enough to hold 30 people and had a large round table in the middle, full of food. Ziram and Ragan made their way to the opposite side of the table, leaving Blaze by the chair closest to Bree. She approached the chair and carefully sat down, leaving her backpack on, and taking a moment to give Blaze a quick scratch near his ears. She looked across the table and noticed Ziram did not have his staff. 2 young men approached from the other side of the tent and moved some of the food closer to Bree. She could see a casserole of some sort, many drumsticks, some eggs, and a plate of cheese. She grabbed a piece of cheese, smelled it, and then held it up to Blaze for him to smell. Ziram scoffed at her after Blaze sniffed and then nodded. "We have no reason to poison you," Ragan said on their behalf, and then went ahead and grabbed a drumstick, ripped a huge piece off, and then chewed loudly. "You'll understand if I don't want any bird-type food right now," Bree said. "Cheese will be fine." She took a bite. It was the best thing she had eaten in a long time, but had a hard time not showing her pleasure as she wanted to look tough in front of Ragan and Ziram. "Tell me, how did you get up here before me and bring all this food in this tent?" she asked, grabbing more cheese. Ragan finally sat down. "When we took over gold, we placed monsters in each temple to guard the elements, but you already knew that. The wind temple was the hardest to get into, so we tunneled our way through the mountain below, digging up and up and up until we reached the courtyard. We wanted it big enough to move an army, including horses. If you were to walk around to the far side of the tower, you see an entrance to the tunnel leading back down. The entrance down below is where the Wind Creek enters the mountain." Bree sat back, resting her hands in her lap. "What do you want from me?" Ragan glanced up at Ziram briefly, and then took a long drink from his cup. "We want you to restore access to the ether. When Serrato gave all his power to the Legion to you, he cut ties to the ether to everyone. But you. You now have 2 of the elements, correct? Earth and wind. We want to help you get fire and water. Will you leave gold if I do?" Ragan suddenly laughed loud and hard, startling everyone in the tent. "Little girl," he began, making Bree's skin crawl. "I didn't kill the Legion, including your parents, just to give up my control of gold. I need access to the ether to rule this land fully." Anger rose in Bree at the mention that he killed her parents. She tried to calm herself, but she could tell she was breathing hard. "Why did you kill my parents? And my brother? And Shen's father?" "Toma? You want to talk to me about Toma and Garen?" Ragan chuckled and glanced at Ziram. "They were fools to follow me, but they were loyal fools. All of them followed that pathetic king of Oz and chose to be defensive, instead of dealing with a problem head on like I did. I was the only one willing to go to the pirates and stop them. Once they saw my leadership and willingness to do so, they followed me, because they agreed with me. In the end, I not only stopped the pirates, but I became their leader." He spread his arms out in an arrogant pose, as if he wanted Bree to suddenly begin worshipping him. You killed them to prove a point? He leaned over and pointed a finger at her. No. Toma and Garen wouldn't join with me once I led the pirates. I had nothing to do with their fate. But your parents, they just got in the way. What's your point in all of this? Bree asked Ziram. Redemption for my kind, was his response. And it's always good to have a wizard on your side, Ragan added with another chuckle. You're both monsters. Bree seethed at them. We've been called many things. Pirates, fiends, monsters, Ziram stated. Ragan rested his elbows on the table and interjected. You and I will travel to the last two temples, restore the elements there. Then I will take you back to the castle where you will free the ether and give Ziram and I full control over Goal. What will happen to me? Either I'll lock you up or you will die. You need me alive. Do we? Ziram suddenly asked, causing Bree to quickly glance at him. What if I don't help you? She asked Ragan. Ragan looked to Blaze, who was glaring at him from across the table. Then I will kill everyone you care about in Goal, starting with your dog. There was a sudden commotion outside, and Bree heard some pirates shouting about something in the sky. She then smiled at Ragan and Ziram. He's a wolf, and you'll never get those elements with me. I have Morgana's wand. During the last little bit of their conversation, Bree had taken the Vitarium bracelet off her wrist and tucked it into Blaze's collar, all out of sight as Blaze's neck didn't come over the table. She then unhooked the leash and waited for the commotion outside to happen. Once she announced that she had the wand, she reached over and pressed the center icon on the bracelet. Blaze vanished into thin air. Ragan stood violently. Traitor! He screamed as he reached behind his chair and drew out a broadsword. Ziram took a step forward, and his staff flew out from behind him and into his hand. Bree was suddenly confused at this, and Ragan noted it. He jumped over the table, swung his sword in the air. Bree rolled out of her chair and pulled the grip hook out of her hip pack. She fired it out of the tent, felt it hit something, and then pulled her quickly into the night air as Ragan's sword missed her backpack and split the chair she had just been in. She impacted with a pirate dressed in armor, the end of the grip hook impaled in his shoulder. He was still in shock as she retracted and then ran for her life. Most of the pirate horde was spread out on the other side of the tower, watching the strange orange lights in the night over the ocean. Only a few soldiers remained near the tent, and even they were thrown off by the sudden commotion from Bree and the tent. She ran to the end of the courtyard, where the path led to the stairs and the rock platform down the cliff face. She entered the path and heard the archway above her explode. She fell to her side and looked back. Ziram was floating quickly toward her, his staff in one hand and the other full of pulsating ball of dark energy. He shot that hand out, releasing a small stream of energy at her. She rolled out of the way as it hit the wall where she had been, making it explode. Finding her feet, she ran down the path as fast as she could. Using her gifts from the ether, she increased her speed and leapt off the end into the open air. After a moment, she began falling down the side of the mountain toward the forest below. Do-do-do.